For thousands of years, we have been fascinated by the idea of ordinary people being able to do extraordinary things. Whether it is a story rooted in ancient philosophy or an account of the supernormal abilities displayed by Eastern monks, the possibility that there exist extended human capacities continues to capture our imagination. We have a wealth of literature and myth dedicated to this topic, and as a result, scientists are finally taking notice. A number of studies and programs have been conducted, with significant statistical results, which demonstrate that these are real phenomena, the implications of which are far-reaching. One such program to attest to the reality of these extended human capacities is the Stargate Project, a program established by the United States Army, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and SRI International to study psychic phenomenon. The program actually lasted more than 2 decades, and the results were declassified after the program was supposedly shut down. Our world is drenched in secrecy, think the black budget, and the United States government, one example, classifies up to 500 million pages of documents every single year. Even when something is allowed to be published and released for public viewing, it remains a fairly safe assumption that much has still been withheld from public knowledge regarding these programs. One project under the Stargate umbrella involved remote viewing, which is the ability of individuals to describe a remote geographical location up to several 100,000 kilometers away, sometimes even more, from their physical location. To summarize, over the years, the back-and-forth criticism of protocols, refinement of methods, and successful replication of this type of remote viewing in independent laboratories has yielded considerable scientific evidence for the reality of the remote viewing phenomenon. Adding to the strength of these results was the discovery that a growing number of individuals could be found to demonstrate high-quality remote viewing, often to their own surprise. The development of this capability at SRI has evolved to the point where visiting CIA personnel with no previous exposure to such concepts have performed well under controlled laboratory conditions. Source: this effort began, supposedly, because the CIA had concerns about Soviet investigations into psychic phenomenon, as the United States had gathered intelligence showing that the Soviets were engaged in psychotronic research. Remote viewing in the Lost Plain in Africa. Concerned that a psychical PSI gap existed between U.S. and Soviet paranormal research efforts, the CIA sponsored discrete research into paranormal phenomena commencing in 1972. Over the succeeding 23 years, the U.S. military and intelligence services were actively involved in paranormal research and operations involving a process known as remote viewing. Remote viewing, which produced specialized human intelligence support, served as part of overall military and government organizations' intelligence collection efforts. To the left is an intelligence photo of a Soviet Tu-22 bomber, one that was outfitted as a reconnaissance aircraft and lost in Zaire in 1979. Remarkably, the plane was then located by an Air Force remote viewer. President Jimmy Carter was aware of this, admitting to national press that the CIA, without his knowledge, once consulted a psychic to locate a missing government plane. According to CNN, he told students at Emory University that the special U.S. plane crashed somewhere in Zaire. The only thing is that it was a Russian, not American plane. According to Carter, the woman went into a trance and gave some latitude and longitude figures. We focused our satellite cameras on that point and the plane was there. According to Paul H. Smith, Ph.D., and one of the participants in the Stargate project, now a retired U.S. Army major, gives us more detail from his book that is sourced below. In March 1979, a young Air Force enlisted woman named Rosemary Smith was handed a map of the entire continent of Africa. She was told only that sometime in the past few days a Soviet Tu-22 bomber outfitted as a spy plane had crashed somewhere in the continent. The United States desperately wanted to recover the top-secret Russian codes and equipment the Tu-22 carried. Using their remote viewing skills, she pinpointed the wreckage, even though it had been completely swallowed by the jungle canopy into which the jet had plunged nose first. This is one example of many successful hits that came out of the program. For example, prior to the flyby of Jupiter by Pioneer 10, a spacecraft launched into space in 1972 and the first to fly directly through the asteroid belt and make observations of Jupiter, a gentleman by the name of Ingo Swann was able to successfully describe and view a ring around Jupiter which scientists had no idea even existed. This took place precisely before the first ever flyby of Jupiter by NASA's Pioneer 10 spacecraft, which confirmed that the ring did actually exist. These results were published and they are linked earlier in this article. To determine whether it was necessary to have a beacon individual at the target site, Swan suggested carrying out an experiment to remote view the planet Jupiter before the upcoming NASA Pioneer 10 flyby. In that case, much to his chagrin, and ours, he found a ring around Jupiter, and wondered if perhaps he had remote viewed Saturn by mistake. Our colleagues in astronomy were quite unimpressed as well, until the flyby revealed that an unanticipated ring did in fact exist. Pretty fascinating, isn't it? Swan went on to write about the moon, and other strange factors that are associated with space we have yet to become aware of. It's also important to mention here that these are black-budget programs which have very little, if any, oversight from Congress. Within these we have Special Access Programs, SAP, and from these we have unacknowledged and waived SAPs. These programs do not exist publicly, but they do indeed exist. They are better known as deep black programs. A 1997 U.S. Senate report described them as so sensitive that they are exempt from standard reporting requirements to the Congress. The former Canadian Defense Minister Paul Hellyer once told us that it is ironic that the U.S. would begin a devastating war, allegedly in search of weapons of mass destruction, when the most worrisome developments in this field are occurring in your own backyard. It is ironic that the U.S. should be fighting monstrously expensive wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, allegedly to bring democracy to those countries, when it itself can no longer claim to be called a democracy, when trillions, and I mean thousands of billions of dollars have been spent on projects about which both the Congress and the Commander-in-Chief have been kept deliberately in the dark. Personally, I think it's a shame that these abilities, and other extended human capacities are studies, taught and used within the military-industrial complex. Perhaps one day, these things will be taught and explored more openly, without all of the secrecy involved.
Hello. Did you know that the exact recipes for developing miraculous, physical psychic abilities like telekinesis, teleportation, radical healing, materialization and many others have been known for thousands of years? Ancient texts from India give the exact methods to develop these skills, but these conventional methods take years, even decades of meditation and grueling dedication to master. Fortunately, a remarkable new training method has been discovered that can awaken these dormant powers that you already possess much sooner, and with far less effort than you can imagine. Learn to make honest-to-goodness, physical miracles with your mind power alone. Let Miracle Mastery take you by the hand and lead you through the step-by-step exercises that will get you there. See the link in the description to visit the All Things Psychic website so you can learn more about Miracle Mastery right now.